Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Leviathan Wilds for Moon Crab Games. Leviathan Wilds is a cooperative experience in which you have these colossuses, these giant beasts that have rocks and crystals growing over them, corrupting them, and it's up to you and your fellow teammates, or solo, playing whichever characters you want to play, to go ahead and retrieve them, to crush those crystals, to take them out and restore some sense of balance and peacefulness and all those things. That's the thematic approach to the game. Mechanically speaking, Leviathan Wilds is an action optimization engine. It's a game which you have your deck of cards, you're trying to play your cards for their action points in order to as efficiently take actions as possible before you ultimately die, before the game proves to be too much of a struggle and you find yourself, well, dead, and then out of action points, and unable to complete your objective. Your objective in this case are the crystals. You have these crystals represented by these little dice over here. This is a good time to say that this is a component, all rules, components, etc., all that stuff subject to change, and link to the Kickstarter down below so you can go ahead and check that out. But going back to the dice over here, the component prototype dice, back to over here, we have these dice over here representing the fact that these are the crystals you're trying to take out. These are the pressure points on the various colossuses, on the leviathans, these pressure points of crystals that you have to strike down, get rid of them, and restore some sense of balance. And to do so, what you need to do is you need to get your little climbers from the ground where they start off, slowly up the leviathan, whichever leviathan you're playing as, and they are all different. We'll go through this at some point in the review. We'll show you all the stuff, but going through the various leviathans, moving your way up them in whatever different pattern they have, finding the crystals in question, and then spending action points from your cards in order to strike them down. Action points, so you can use those action points. So for example, I can spend 4 action points, and I can spend 3 of those action points to crush this crystal if I'm on that location. And then over here you have a whole list of the other action points you have. There's different things you can do. You can spend an action point to move, so I can go 1, 2, 3. You can spend action points to glide downwards, so I can go ahead and spend 2 action points to glide downwards diagonally. You can only glide downwards diagonally, you cannot move up diagonally. You can spend 3 action points to jump if you want to avoid some of these negative spots over here. If I'm trying to get from here to here, I can spend 3 action points to completely avoid that spot, jumping over there to that location. You can spend points to rest. One of the things you have in this game is your deck is a big part of the management of the game. Your deck represents your grip. Every time you draw a new card, you're losing grip on the climbing process. You're losing grip and you might eventually fall. And so eventually you have to find rest points that are these small little perches where you can then spend 2 AP to rest, shuffling your discard back into your deck so you don't fall. As soon as you draw your last card, you fall. Now, falling does not necessarily mean you fall to the ground. It might mean you fall to the next rest point, but if you don't time when and where you run out of cards, you will have to start again. Well, not entirely start again, but start again from the ground up. Past that, you can spend points to mend. You can spend any action points to mend, which will be important because the Colossus, the Leviathan, is slowly going to be attacking you under the influence of whatever crystals and all that stuff. The Leviathan is slowly going to be striking out against you, and you have to spend action points to heal those strikes. And then you can go ahead and spend the points to go ahead and strike the actual crystals themselves. And then finally, you can go ahead and examine to gather these cubes, spend an action point to gather these cubes, which will help you level up in between scenarios. That's the general idea of what you're doing. As far as the turn sequence every single round, the turn sequence is you're going to start every round by revealing threat. You're going to flip one of these cards over. These are custom decks for each Leviathan has their own deck of cards. You're going to do what it says, either the top or the bottom part, depending on the threat. You see, the threat starts at different areas depending on the difficulty level you're starting as, and then regardless of the difficulty level, every time you go through the cards, the threat will escalate. Which means every time you go through these 5 or 6 cards, every single time, the cards get scarier and scarier as more of them strike out with the harsher effect. In this case, we have Lightning Strike. If we were at any of these 2 intro levels, we would simply go ahead and do a Lightning Strike, dealing 2 damage to the column that has this. You'd go ahead and place this on the active climber, and then anyone in that column would take 2 damage. Although alternatively, with the Advanced Lightning Strike, we're going to go ahead and do that to 3 columns instead and have a different impact at the same time. So the cards are all going to represent something that's happening bad. It might target the highest climber. It might target all climbers. It might target with a specific little action marker, and you have to choose how you're going to move and avoid that, if at all, in order to avoid the strike of whatever it is the Colossus is doing. Once you're done with that, you're going to activate your climber. You can spend 1 card for its action points, and then at any time on your turn or other turns, you can spend cards for their abilities as well. So you can go ahead and spend a card, getting 4 action points, and augment that with abilities. I can go ahead and toss in Scramble in order to jump from here over to an adjacent part over there, and then spend my other 4 action points to go ahead and go 1, 2, and whatever it is I want to do. Strike the crystal if I need to, add extra range, do any number of different activities on the cards. When you're done using your action points, when you're done spending your cards for their abilities and their action points, you'll resolve the threat. The threat does not happen right away. The threat resolves in the 3rd step over there, giving you time to evade, to react, to adjust for what you need to do, and respond to the threat in question. And then finally, when you're done, all the cards you spent will be gone into your discard pile, and you'll go ahead and draw more cards, and this is what you need to be careful, because if you ever draw your last card, you will fall. You'll fall to either the next rest spot or alternatively all the way to the ground. And speaking of which, if you ever enter empty space, which many effects in a variety of the Colossuses, the Leviathans, will go ahead and force you to enter empty space in the game. And if you ever do so, you fall to the next rest point. And that's basically Leviathan Wilds. You're going to rinse and repeat this sequence until you eventually take down all crystals, slowly eliminating every single one, or alternatively, until you die. And that will happen whenever these two markers cross one another. Slowly across the course of the game, your exhaustion is going to be slowly leveling up, as is your health, and if the two ever cross, then that climber is going to be exhausted, and the other climbers have one turn left to accomplish their goals or call it a day. A few other small things we didn't talk about. We didn't heavily focus on the fact that these little target points over here, whenever you enter those, you take a damage. Whenever you enter the yellow points, you're going to lose a grip. Losing a grip means losing a card from your deck. And whenever you lash out against these blue crystals over here, you're going to go ahead and move this exhaustion up, and all of those can be mitigated by the cards you play. If I play this card for my action points this round, then I can ignore the effects of those two symbols. That'll be true for any number of other cards as well. So for example, if I strike using this card over here, I can ignore the negative effect of striking one of those crystals. Few other small things. We didn't talk heavily about the leveling up in between scenarios. We didn't talk heavily about the cards you can gather, the points you can spend, the various interactions you can have, but for the most part, that covers everything. Last thing we'll cover before we dive into the review is I'm just going to show you a variety of the Colossuses in play, of the Leviathans. I keep calling these Colossus because Shadow the Colossus in my head, but the Leviathans. We'll show you the last thing over here. So, starting off from the beginning of this book, and this is prototype, we only have a handful of the situations here. You'll start off with this fairly introductory beast, going through that, then you'll move to over here, you'll move to Sentinel, and following Sentinel is going to have a nice arc upwards, and he's constantly trying to push you to the side. Then you'll move to Storm, and from Storm to Avalanche over here, and then finally from Avalanche, you're going to move to the Watcher over here. And that's basically what you have as far as these cards, as far as the Leviathans you're fighting against. Each one has not only its own pattern and its own slight adjustment to how you're going to deal with it, but additionally each one has its own deck of cards and also own rewards and ways that you're going to level up your characters, build out your decks, add more to the way you can combine all the things in this game. And that's going to bring us to the review part of this video, which is starting off with ease of play. Rules are fairly easy to go through. Even for prototype rules, they're very clear, very easy to dive into. The sequences are fairly precise. A few small things as far as, what you're doing in between games and the ways you level up, basic stuff like that. But overall, this is a very easy game to play. It's a very easy game to teach. Plays in roughly, I want to say, around 45 minutes to an hour on the slow end, and table space is fairly minimal. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 4 player game. I've played this at 1, 2, and 3 players. Playing it 1 player, I've only ever done dual-handed. I don't even know if the game lets or wants you to do single, true solo effectively. Whenever I've done solo, I've done 2 characters at a time, so I just find the interactions a lot more satisfying. It's possible that the rules specifically want that. I don't know offhand. As far as player counts, all of those are fine. All 1, 2, and 3 were all fine. I'd say 2 is probably my favorite. 3 adds a little bit more downtime, and 1 is me cooperating with myself. 2 lets me cooperate with other players, which I probably appreciated the most. But all of them were fine. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, first of all, the whole grip and the hand management and the grip aspect of the game. You're trying to go through the game trying to be mindful of your deck. The whole entire sequence here is the fact that as you go through things, as you do things, eventually stuff is happening to you. Bad stuff is happening to you. Every single time you reveal one of these cards, it means another bad thing is slowly happening, and as these cards cycle, this moves up, and then more and more, you will slowly get hit more and more with those blue effects, which you can't come back from, as opposed to your health, which you can recover from. And that's going to lead to more and more pressure on you as you try to slowly make your way to the end, understanding that every turn that you aren't maximizing is another turn where the Leviathan can strike back at you. The fact that you have to balance your grip is a big part of that, because sure, you can rest every single turn, sure, you can play it safe, sure, you can heal yourself. You could do all those things, but if you aren't being efficient with all your actions, if you aren't taking advantage of everything properly, you will slowly be running out. You might be tempted to use all your abilities all the time, but if the abilities aren't worth the trade-off, that means you're going to have to spend action points to rest more often, and you have to get the right rest point in order to do so. And so you're constantly juggling these variety of economies in the game, trying to be mindful of the fact that the longer you take, the more bad stuff happens. And the more bad stuff happens, the more likely it is that you will not make it through, and you'll have to repeat and deal with that particular Leviathan again. Additionally, the difficulty level adjustments are very solid. My first play of this was playing it on the story mode, which was not that satisfying, and normal mode was decent, a step in the right direction, but still I felt like a little bit more challenge. For me, hard has been so far where I've enjoyed it. Hard has been where I feel like it really comes down to the wire. I am a little terrified of moving to expert. There's 4 difficulty levels. Expert feels like it would just be a slap in the face, given the fact that hard already feels like a tense one. But the fact that there are difficulty levels allows you to enjoy this game at whatever level you want. It allows you to sit there and say, you know what, that wasn't that much of a challenge. Well, let's ramp it up a notch. Let's go ahead and adjust it, because it will give you those 4 flexibilities, each one providing a different level depending on the type of gameplay experience you're looking for. The powers and action economy are a big part of the game. This goes back to the hand management as well, but the general action economy, I mean, the entire thing really is an efficiency puzzle. The entire game of Leviathan Wilds is an efficiency puzzle, and you're constantly playing that with these cards over here, choosing which cards to use for the action points, which cards will have abilities that will help you, whether to use those abilities now or to save for next turn, whether to double down on all those abilities or not, which action points do you want to go with, when do you want to take a strike, when do you want to walk through these various negative effects, when do you want to glide downwards because it's the right move to get to the right spot, when do you want to move up the board because you're going to go all the way up and then slowly spend your time gliding downwards around the board. Every single Leviathan presents its own different challenge as far as how you encounter with it. Every single character represents its own different way you're going to deal with it. And additionally, you have these you have the characters as well as these almost classes you can mix and match together, such that you have these different decks you're playing with, these different builds you can build, as well as these different mementos and other things you're going to earn. More cards you're going to earn as you go through the encounters. You're going to earn mementos as after you defeat the very first Leviathan, and they're all giving you just more powers and abilities, more variability, more flexibility, more choices in what is basically an efficiency puzzle. As far as what I don't like, first of all, losing isn't obvious until it's happening. What I mean by that is you can spend your entire game going through things and feeling like it's totally fine. It's all good. It's totally an easy breezy experience. Nothing's going wrong. And then if you stop paying attention, you'll realize that all of a sudden you're about to lose because of the fact that these 2 markers are about to cross. You have 4 more dice to get you. You're not going to get to them in time, and you just can't stop it from happening. What I mean by that is the pressure of losing is not there. Contrasted with, let's say, for example, a game like Spirit Island, which I find is the exact opposite. When I'm playing a game like Spirit Island, I find that I feel the pressure of losing the entire time, even when I'm not. And I like that sense of pressure. I like that sense of, okay, it's hard and I have to challenge it, because then there's a sense of accomplishment when I beat it. In Leviathan Wilds, it took a few games before I started to feel that sense of accomplishment, because it wasn't always obvious to me that the losing was happening until I was playing it more, until I'm going through it. It feels like it's easy, it feels like you're in control, and then suddenly you just die. And that's when you're like, oh, hey, this game is actually harder than I thought it was. I need to dive back in and do that. So I don't love the fact that the sense of danger isn't as present the entire time. Hopefully that made sense. Secondly, is limited in variability, although that is helped by the campaign progression. The puzzle you're going through is present. The puzzle you're going through of what you choose to do, how you choose to do it, which cards you choose to use, it's definitely present, it's definitely fun, but as you go through this more and more, that puzzle might find itself winding down a bit. Now, I'm not sure yet on this because of the fact that there is progression in the game, and the progression does add cards, and you could mix up characters, and you could choose different characters. So there still is variability in the game. There's still plenty of options on the table. I do wonder if this is the kind of game that I have long term, or if it's the kind of game that I want to explore, play against all the Leviathans, have fun that way, maybe mix up a few classes, and then call it a day. I get the sense from it where so far that this is a game I want to play through, but not necessarily a game I want to keep and continue diving into. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, the theme does not come through for me. Now, even though the theme does not come through for me, it's not a problem for me because I play these games mechanically. I like theme, but mechanics first above all for me. In terms of this game though, the whole sense of, you have these Leviathans who need help, and you're smashing these crystals off them and you're rescuing them, I don't get any of that. I don't personally get any of that. I mean, sure, the art's there, and that's where it kind of ends. The Leviathans are attacking you, and you're smashing I just don't get the theme, which may or may not be a thing for you. You may get the theme totally, or you may or may not care. But overall, for me, I get the sense that the theme is there, and I'm just here for the action economy puzzle of the engine, of the game. As far as final thoughts on Leviathan Wilds, I enjoy Leviathan Wilds. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm having fun going through it, and where I am right now with it is kind of what I touched upon already. I want to go through the Leviathans. I want to explore this sort of campaign. It has growth elements, and so there is a campaign progression, I guess. I want to go through the campaign. I want to go through the Leviathans. It's a quick, easy, breezy experience. I don't know how many Leviathans the final game has. I don't know the number of Leviathans it's going to have, but that will determine effectively what I'm playing with over here. Am I sitting here going through 10, 15 Leviathans, 8 Leviathans? I don't know what the number is, but But I imagine I'll build my characters, I'll level them up, I'll go through the process, and I'll have fun. It's not an overly demanding experience. Each Leviathan coming in at roughly an hour, that could be 10 hours of play, which is fun, enjoyable, and I'm happy to continue diving into it. I've already gone through a bunch over here, and they are fun, especially as you start to realize there is a challenge and a puzzle to be solved here. At the same time, I don't love it enough to dive into it past that. I like the engine, it is satisfying, it is rewarding, it is a fun experience that I'm happy to play and continue playing, but one that I think leaves once I'm done going through it. Overall, it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me, an enjoyable game, a solid recommendation, and one that you can find on Kickstarter at the moment at the link down below. Until next time, hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.